Following the Parthians' brilliant victory at Carrhae, approximately 10,000 Romans, along with the eagle standards of the Republic, fell into Parthian hands. The King of Kings ordered that the standards be kept in the royal treasury, and also commanded that the 10,000 Roman prisoners be sent to Merv to establish an impenetrable defense system. Afterward, Orodes removed General Surena, who had become a threat to his throne, and appointed his son Pacorus as the new commander of the army. Orodes also strengthened his influence by marrying Laodice, the daughter of Antiochus I, king of Commagene. Within a year, Orodes was able to solidify the monarchy. He had become related and allied with the kings of Armenia and Commagene through marriage, eliminated his greatest rival, and now his son commanded the army. Everything was set for Orodes to order his forces to advance into Roman territory. Cassius, one of Crassus's officers, managed to retreat to Syria with 13,000 survivors of the Battle of Carrhae. The Roman soldiers chose him as their commander. Cassius was preparing for the imminent Parthian attack. Around the same time, Cicero, the famous Roman orator, arrived in the east with a 12,000-strong army as the governor of Cilicia. In 52 BCE, Pacorus, with a small force, headed to northern Mesopotamia. He quickly regained control of all areas east of the Euphrates, but refrained from advancing deeper into Roman territory due to the limited number of his forces. He only attacked a few small towns and border villages, obtaining a good amount of spoils and gathering useful intelligence on the Roman forces, their numbers, roads, and the locations of cities and villages in Syria. The defeat of Crassus and the possibility of a Parthian invasion weakened Roman authority in the east. In Judea, a man named Aristobulus revolted against Roman rule. Although the Romans quickly suppressed the uprising, the event highlighted the unstable situation Rome faced in the east. Cicero, upon taking control of the governorship of Cilicia, realized the critical condition of Roman forces in the east. Nearly all of Rome's eastern allies had either joined the Parthians or declared neutrality in the conflict between the two powers. To draw the Senate's attention to the threat the Parthians posed and the danger to Rome's eastern possessions, Cicero continuously sent messages to Roman senators, urging them to immediately send reinforcements. After looting the border towns and gathering the necessary intelligence, Pacorus camped near the Euphrates. Orodes dispatched a large army under the command of Osaces to join Pacorus's forces in northern Mesopotamia. Osaces soon took command of the Parthian army. Due to Pacorus's youth, Orodes had sent Osaces to lead the military operations in Syria. Pacorus's title as commander was more ceremonial, as it was Osaces who issued the necessary orders. In 51 BCE, the Parthian army, under Osaces' command, crossed the Euphrates to conquer Syria. The Parthians successfully captured Tibna and continued their advance into Syrian territory. Cassius, unable to face the Parthian forces, immediately retreated after hearing of their movements and took refuge behind the walls of Antioch. Cities surrendered to the Parthians one after another, and some even joined their forces. The people of Syria viewed the Parthians as liberators who had come to free them from Roman rule. Cassius Dio, the Roman historian, says, "The people of Syria had grown weary of Roman rule. They viewed the Parthians as their neighbors and felt a greater kinship with them." The Parthians soon reached Antioch and laid siege to the city. Few details are available regarding the siege of Antioch. According to Roman sources, Cassius, along with 13,000 survivors from the Battle of Carrhae, defended the city. Roman soldiers stood guard atop the city's walls, and some had been stationed in the outskirts under Cassius's orders to inflict damage on the Parthian army, which was mainly composed of cavalry. The Parthians approached the city and besieged it. Osaces gave Cassius a chance to surrender, but after several days passed, and Cassius ignored the Parthians' offer, Osaces prepared his soldiers for an assault. The Parthians first attacked the areas outside of the city where Roman soldiers were stationed. Despite the Romans' fierce resistance, the Parthians managed to defeat them and then prepared to attack the city's walls. Under the heavy fire of Roman archers, the Parthians approached the walls. Despite suffering heavy losses, they stubbornly persisted in the battle until they managed to seize the western walls of the city. The Romans quickly responded and recaptured the walls. The Parthians, having incurred heavy casualties, retreated. After this defeat, the Parthians made another attempt to take the city, but were again unsuccessful. According to ancient historians, the failure of the Parthian forces was due to their lack of expertise in siege warfare and their reliance on cavalry, which was ineffective in urban combat. Following their failure to capture Antioch, Osaces decided to maintain the siege with part of his forces while sending the rest to conquer other parts of Syria and even Asia Minor. The Parthians encountered little resistance as Syrian cities surrendered to them without difficulty, as many of the inhabitants opened their gates to the Parthian forces. The eastern front of Rome was in chaos. Neither Cassius nor Cicero dared to challenge the Parthian forces. The Parthians had successfully conducted diplomacy, either attracting Rome's eastern allies to their side or ensuring that they remained neutral. Rome's only hope was Bibulus, who was expected to arrive in the east with an army and take over as governor of Syria. Concerned about the situation, Cicero took the initiative and began negotiating with some Galatian tribes, successfully recruiting some of them to his camp. With 3 legions, he set out from his base in Cilicia to lift the siege of Antioch. Osaces, upon learning of Cicero's movement, dispatched part of his army to Cilicia to confront him. On October 12th, 51 BCE, the Parthian forces reached the gates of Cilicia and set up camp. The next day, the Parthians left their camps to face the approaching Roman forces. While the details of the battle are unclear, Cicero, who led the Roman forces, mentioned in a letter to the Senate that after a fierce engagement, he managed to force the Parthians into retreat. The Parthians withdrew to their camps and prepared for a Roman assault. Cicero wrote that, on the night of the same day, the Romans attacked the Parthian camps and by sunrise had captured and set them on fire. When Osaces received news of the Parthian defeat, he realized that if he continued the siege, he would be trapped between Cicero's and Cassius's forces. Since the Parthian troops were scattered throughout Syria, a full-scale confrontation was impossible. Osaces abandoned the siege and began a retreat. Initially, the goal of the Parthians was to change their position to avoid being caught between the 2 Roman armies, and subsequently, they aimed to regroup their scattered forces and launch a counterattack against the Romans. With the siege of Antioch lifted, Cassius immediately led his forces out of the city and pursued the Parthians. Some Parthian soldiers attempting to join Osaces' camp were intercepted and killed by Cassius's forces along the way. On their retreat, Osaces aimed to capture the city of Antigonia and turn it into a base of operations. However, the city's surroundings were heavily forested, which posed a challenge for the Parthians, whose army primarily consisted of cavalry, limiting their mobility. Osaces ordered the trees to be cut down, but this was a difficult task, especially with Cassius watching their every move. Realizing he couldn't capture the city, Osaces reorganized his forces and continued the retreat. Cassius, carefully observing the Parthians, set a trap along their path. He ordered a small group of his soldiers to attack the Parthians and then retreat. Seeing this, Osaces decided to pursue the Roman soldiers. However, once the Parthians entered the designated area, a Roman war trumpet sounded, and Roman forces ambushed Osaces and his troops from all sides. Some of the Parthian cavalry managed to flee, but many were captured and killed. Although Osaces was wounded in the battle, he managed to escape with the help of his companions. A few days later, Osaces succumbed to his injuries. Upon receiving news of his death, Pacorus ordered the remaining Parthian forces to evacuate Syria. Despite the failure of the Parthian campaign between 53 and 50 BCE, the core of the Parthian army remained intact and still posed a significant threat to Rome's eastern borders. Rumors even circulated that the king of Parthia was planning to lead a larger army into Syria himself. When Bibulus arrived in Syria and officially took command as governor, his first action was to address the Parthian threat. To achieve this, he engaged in negotiations with a Parthian satrap named Ornodapates to spark a civil war within Parthia. Ornodapates, who likely governed a part of Mesopotamia, aligned with Roman interests and declared Pacorus as the new Parthian king, sparking a civil conflict within the Parthian Empire and diverting their attention away from Syria. The Parthian king immediately summoned Pacorus and his forces to the capital. Pacorus, unwilling to oppose his father, surrendered himself and his troops. However, Ornodapates' rebellion occupied the Parthians for a year. While Bibulus's strategy worked in the short term, keeping the Parthians busy with internal strife for a year, the Parthian threat to Rome's eastern borders still required a long-term solution. Although Cicero and many senators emphasized the need to address the issue, significant events within the Roman Republic at the time shifted their attention away from the east. In 60 BCE, Pompey, Caesar, and Crassus formed an informal pact, agreeing to use their power and influence to support one another. As a result, in 57 BCE, the Republic was officially divided among these three men. Crassus became governor of Syria. Caesar's governorship of Gaul was extended for another 5 years, and Pompey was appointed governor of 2 provinces in Spain. While Crassus's fate has already been discussed, we will briefly touch on Pompey and Caesar. After becoming consul, Caesar continued his military campaigns against the Gallic tribes. From 58 to 50 BCE, he led a massive campaign against the Gallic and Germanic tribes. Despite fierce resistance, Caesar achieved remarkable victories. In 53 BCE, while Crassus was facing death in Mesopotamia, Caesar managed to land some of his troops in Britain, though this brought him little success. Caesar's Gallic campaigns were overwhelmingly successful, allowing him to amass great wealth and power. At the time, he commanded 13 legions, roughly 50,000 soldiers. The soldiers who accompanied Caesar in this campaign had, over the years of war and living alongside their commander, become a seasoned and fearsome force, willing to sacrifice their lives for him. As long as Crassus was alive, power was balanced between Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. However, when the Parthians killed Crassus in battle in 53 BCE, the balance of power between Caesar and Pompey was disrupted. The relationship between the two further deteriorated after the death of Caesar's daughter, who had been married to Pompey. Caesar's growing power and popularity among the people terrified the Roman senators, as he posed a serious and dangerous threat to the authority of the Senate. However, the senators alone were not able to stand against Caesar, who was a military genius and commanded a powerful army. As a result, they rallied around Pompey and sought to pit these two former friends against each other. In 49 BCE, as Caesar was returning to Rome from his successful military campaign, he received a message near the Rubicon River. The Senate had declared Caesar an enemy of Rome and Pompey as the protector of the Republic. They demanded that Caesar disband his forces and surrender to the Senate. Caesar sent his trusted officer, Mark Antony, to Rome to object to the Senate's decision, but to no avail. They threatened Caesar with death and expelled him from the city of Rome. On January 7th, 49 BCE, Caesar crossed the Rubicon with his army. This action had only one meaning: war against the Senate. Caesar's move threw Italy into fear and panic. On the other hand, the Senate was caught off guard. Pompey didn't have enough time to prepare an army to confront Caesar, so he fled from Rome and sought refuge in Greece. Caesar entered Rome victoriously, spent a year consolidating his power, and in 48 BCE set out for Greece to face Pompey. The Parthian king, who had recently quelled Onodapates' rebellion, was closely watching the internal developments in Rome. King Orodes II decided to align himself with the Roman Republicans and sent an envoy to Pompey, offering substantial military support in exchange for Syria being handed over to the Parthians. Pompey, considering the Parthians' demand excessive, rejected the offer. In 48 BCE, Caesar and Pompey faced each other at Pharsalus. A fierce battle ensued between the Republicans and Caesar's supporters. Despite Pompey's numerical superiority, Caesar's troops, hardened by years of warfare in Gaul, were more disciplined and skilled. Pompey couldn't stand against Caesar and suffered a crushing defeat. With few options left, Pompey considered going to King Orodes II and continuing the war against Caesar with Parthian support. However, his advisors convinced him to head to Egypt instead. If Pompey had gone to Parthian, history might have turned out differently. Pompey went to Egypt, but upon his arrival on the shores of Alexandria, he was immediately killed by Ptolemy, who sent his severed head to Caesar, a move that only enraged the Roman commander. Caesar, with part of his army, entered Egypt to avenge Pompey's death. Egypt was embroiled in a civil war between Ptolemy and his sister, Cleopatra. Caesar sided with Cleopatra and by 47 BCE had defeated Ptolemy's forces. For 2 more years, Caesar continued to suppress Pompey's supporters across the Republic and finally ended the civil war in 45 BCE. The Roman Civil War provided a prime opportunity for the Parthians to launch a campaign against Rome's eastern borders and reclaim these territories. Why the Parthians did not take this opportunity remains unclear. It is possible that the Parthians were preoccupied with a war against nomadic tribes on their eastern borders, though there is no written evidence of this in historical sources. Another possibility is that the House of Surin in Sistan had rebelled against the Parthians, which wouldn't be far-fetched. Instead of war, the Parthians sought to align themselves with the Roman Republicans. Many governors of Rome's eastern provinces supported Pompey and the Senate, so the Parthians decided to strengthen ties with them and thus influence Roman domestic politics. Orodes II's actions are a testament to the Parthians' strong diplomacy. During the civil war, they were able to find allies among the Republicans. Caesar returned to Rome in 46 BCE, was appointed dictator for 10 years, and in 44 BCE extended his dictatorship for life. During these years, Caesar had been planning a massive campaign against the Parthians. The idea of war with the Parthians had been circulating in the Senate even before Crassus's campaign against them. The Parthians were a threat to Rome's eastern interests and had to be dealt with. But after Crassus's death and the capture of the Roman standards, it was no longer just about interests. The war with the Parthians had become a matter of prestige and pride for Rome. The Parthians, with their humiliating defeat of the Romans at Carrhae, had destroyed Rome's authority and prestige in the eyes of the eastern states. Caesar had planned a grand campaign to avenge the Parthians. He anticipated that the war would last 3 years and had amassed enormous wealth from Asia Minor, Greece, and Syria to finance his campaign. This was set to be the largest military expedition in Roman history. It is possible that Orodes II knew of Caesar's plans, which is why he had aligned himself with the Republicans to have allies behind enemy lines. He, too, had prepared a formidable army to defend against the Roman invasion. On March 15, 44 BCE, when Caesar entered the Roman Senate, the conspirators, led by Cassius and Brutus, suddenly attacked and stabbed him to death. The Parthians were spared a long and costly war. With Caesar's death, the Roman Republic entered another civil war. The Parthians took advantage of the situation and joined the Republicans' cause. Orodes II sent a number of Parthian cavalry to aid Cassius against Octavian and Mark Antony. The war between the Parthians and Romans was far from over. To find out what the Parthian forces did in the Roman Civil War next year, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be informed when the next episode of the First Roman-Parthian War is released. You can also support us financially via the link in the description.